Hi students, welcome back to geology. This is our last video of our water series where we're going to look at groundwater interactions. So as you go through this video, I want you to think about how groundwater interacts with landscapes and how human activity impacts that interaction. Okay, so let's start with the basic surface water to groundwater interaction. So when the groundwater is higher than the elevation of the ground, you tend to have pooling of water at the surface. This can happen very frequently where we have river channels or stream channels. And if those stream channels or river channels are lower in elevation than the top of the groundwater or the water table, then the water underground is going to contribute to adding water to the stream channel. And so we call that a gaining stream or an effluent stream, where the stream gains water and the groundwater is removed and added to surface water. Now, in the opposite scenario, there's surface water on the surface in that stream channel, and the groundwater table is much lower than the elevation of the bottom of the stream channel. And so in that case, the water flows from the surface down into the groundwater, and we call this a losing stream or an influence stream, where the surface water in the stream loses water to the groundwater and groundwater is added to. Okay. Other interactions we have between the surface and groundwater is when we are along coastlines. So groundwater that is considered fresh water can interact with the salt water at the coastlines. And if a well is drilled into that fresh water and sucks too much water towards it, it's going to start sucking some of the salt water to it as well, and you can lose your well to saltwater intrusion. So this is actually really common along the coast of California, where we have seen wells lost to this saltwater intrusion because they are over pumping the amount of fresh water and basically just sucking up all of that salt water. So you don't want that. So there's different things that you can put into your well to try to prevent that from happening. And nowadays we're pretty good at trying to prevent that from happening in our newer wells, even if we've lost other wells to it. But unfortunately, once that water is completely drawn over, then it's just kind of there. It's going to situate itself there unless we have a bunch of extra fresh water that helps push it back towards the sea. So one of the biggest questions that I always get as a geology instructor is, can we drink seawater? Technically, no, but we, in more recent years, have been doing the desalination process with the Pacific Ocean water, especially along the coast of California. They're doing it a lot in Southern California. There's a big plant in Carlsbad, which is near San Diego, that desalinates. So they go through this process, which the first one is distillation, and the second one is reverse osmosis. So in that first diagram A there, seawater will flow into that chamber. That heating coil there will heat up the water, which creates steam. And as steam, it will condensate on that coil and then allow it to drip down. And the steam vapor will condensate as water and then drip down as more H2O molecules. And then on the right-hand side there, you'll see the salt water condense on the right, and then it will flow out that drain as what we call brine. And then through 4, saltwater free will flow out of the chamber. And then in Carlsbad specifically, they go through reverse osmosis next. And so it'll go through that into that chamber on the left there. There will be pressure applied to the water to try to push it through membrane at 3. We're in the diagram B there. And those membranes are set up so that only H2O molecules can go through. So it's a semi-permeable membrane, and salt, so NaCl, sodium chloride, cannot. And so the sodium chloride stays to the left and flows out 5 as brine or very, very salty water. And then salt-free water flows out of 4 on the right. And after that point, they re-inject it into the groundwater, and so that it will kind of homogenize with the groundwater, and then it can be put into the distribution system to distribute to their citizens. All right, recharge is huge. We talked about this a little bit with infiltration. We want infiltration to happen. We don't want runoff to happen. We want the ground to soak up the water because in our aquifers is the best filtration, natural filtration that we have. On the surface, we as humans have contaminated the surface in addition to groundwater, but there's a lot more contaminants on the surface. And so the quicker we can get that water into the ground, the better. Okay, so we want recharge to be high. Unfortunately, there's some things that have caused recharge to not be so high in the Central Valley, and we'll talk about the next couple slides. But again, we want recharge of the groundwater. So we want surface water to go down into the groundwater to store. When we look at groundwater in the Great Valley, there's two different valleys. There's the San Joaquin Valley and the Sacramento Valley. They are geographically different, but they're also very different in their aquifers and how they behave. Because the San Joaquin Valley is completely dominated by farming. We do have a couple of bigger cities, but not nearly as large as Sacramento does. We also have a very large withdrawal, and we have land subsidence happening, which I'll show you in a second. The river systems that we have are the San Joaquin River, the Merced River, and the Kings River. In the Sacramento Valley, there's farming and urban areas, so not as farming dominant. They also get more rainfall than we do in the San Joaquin Valley. They have the Sacramento River and the American River in the North Valley there. All right, so when I'm talking about pumping groundwater, one of the biggest mistakes that we have made as humans is overconsumption or over pumping groundwater. And so before we have heavy pumping, everything kind of dips a little bit where the wells are, but water table stays pretty consistent. Where we have heavy pumping or overconsumption, we end up with what we call a cone of depression, and the water dips down in a very particular spot. So for example, in Fresno, we have a cone of depression in southeast Fresno, which is the oldest part of Fresno, where we have been pulling the most amount of water for the longest time. Unfortunately, this leads to really bad things like subsidence. So when we overdraw water and that water doesn't recharge or go back into groundwater, sediment starts to settle more. And when that happens, we lose ground elevation, which is part one, which is a problem. And part two, the other problem is when the sediment compresses more, that means there's less available space for water to fit. And if we can't fit more water down in there and we can't recharge the groundwater, then we're just going to continue to lose groundwater in our aquifers, which is a huge issue in our area. Okay, so here's a look at what that looks like in southwest Mendota. Between 1925 and 1977, there was a loss of, it said on this table right here, 29 feet of elevation. So he put that on a pole. That pole wasn't there in 1925, but he put that on a pole to represent, this is Joe Poland, who's a USGS scientist. It showed you just how much land was lost in this area from subsidence alone. If you're interested about more of the wells in your area, there's something called the Gamma program. There's a link here that you can click on. It has all of the wells in the Central Valley or in California as a whole. There's a lot in the Central Valley, though, that are put into our aquifer that you can look at the data from. You can see what the trends are over time, if it's losing water, gaining water, all that good stuff. So some other interesting interactions between groundwater and surface water. We have karst topography. So karst topography happens when there is dissolution of limestone. So limestone is starting to dissolve. You might see things like caves or sinkholes or sinking streams. This can become a huge issue in an area you're trying to build construction. But basically the water is just dissolving the rock away and you're losing a bunch of material, and then things give way because that material is left and there's nothing supporting it anymore. So for example, in South America, this is in Guatemala, there is a huge sinkhole that happened and it's from infrastructure problems. So there was additional groundwater, water, it was underground, that was added to the area and it eroded a bunch of the material and then a big sinkhole occurred. It's about 300 feet deep. Other things you might see, especially when you go into higher elevation areas, are like natural springs, especially when we're in the springtime because we have high snow melt And groundwater is higher at this time than when we're dead of summer and we've sucked a bunch of stuff out and things have dried up. And so this is when the water table is intersecting a slope. Okay, so you can see the water kind of coming out of the slope there. And so that will give you a natural spring where it just looks like water is coming out of the rock, but it's really groundwater that's just escaping on the slope. Similarly, we see oases in deserts sometimes if we have enough groundwater in the desert. And so this happens when there's folded layers. So you can see those folded layers in the diagram. And if groundwater sits on top of those folded layers, some of that groundwater might reach the surface, and then you can see it as an oasis. All right, and the last natural occurrence that we're going to look at is hot groundwater. So many of you may have heard of Old Faithful in Yellowstone, which is a geyser that just spits out water consistently every 40 minutes or so. So this is from the magma chamber below ground, heating the groundwater. When the groundwater is heated, it basically boils over and then it escapes out of a hole in the ground and creates this steam eruption. As humans, we have contaminated a lot of things, and our groundwater is no different. So our groundwater can be treated. In Fresno, we treat a lot of our groundwater because we have a lot of contaminated sites in Fresno. So some treatment that we can do is in situ or air sparging, where we basically inject air into the groundwater, and so that air will allow these molecules that are not supposed to be in the water to attach to the air bubbles, and then those are sucked up by a vacuum, and then we can treat that and get rid of all of that material, and then it cleans the groundwater. So that's one method. It's costly, and it's really hard to make sure that things are going correctly. The other option is pump and treat. Pump and treat is we pull the groundwater out and we treat it. Now, this is obviously just as costly. We're not doing it in place. There's a lot of moving of water, and so it becomes a big to-do. So, for example, the tanks on the upper left there would have something like carbon in them. We call it granular activated carbon, and that carbon will attach to the molecules in something like volatile organic carbon or compound, which is a VOC. It is a chlorinated solvent of some kind that industries or dry cleaners would have been using and dumped out, and it ended up in the groundwater. And so we would pull that groundwater out. It would run through a series of these tanks to try to pull all of those VOCs out, and then it either goes back into the distribution system or maybe it's put back into groundwater to re-amalgamate. In Fresno, a lot of those are just put back into the distribution system, mixed with other groundwater, and then treated with things like chlorine and stuff, which doesn't make our water taste great, but it means that your water is clean and safe to drink. All right, in summary, if we remove too much groundwater, we get things like subsidence, where we can't put more groundwater into the aquifers. Groundwater can be treated at various ways. We can also desalinate water so that we can have more water to drink. In your notes, I would like you to choose one groundwater issue, either subsidence, saltwater intrusion, or maybe sinking streams from karst topography, and explain how it happens. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.